Princess Valora stood at the tall window of her study and looked out at the purple sky of her home world. She was 200 years old, which was still young for her people. The Scythians lived for nearly 1,000 years, and she had much to learn before she would take her father's throne. But right now, she was not thinking about politics or her duties. She was thinking about the old book in her hands. The cover was worn, and the pages were yellow with age. It was a book about humans. Her tutor, an old male named Dorvan, had told her many times that humans were nothing special. They came from a small blue planet called Earth in a forgotten part of the galaxy. They were weak, short-lived, and primitive. The Galactic Council had placed them under quarantine centuries ago, which meant no one was allowed to visit their world, and they were not allowed to leave it. Most people believed humans had died out by now. No one had heard from Earth in over 300 years. But the book in Valora's hands told a different story. It was written by a Krovan merchant who had visited Earth before the quarantine. The Krovan were traders who traveled everywhere, and this one had spent 10 years living among humans. What he wrote made Valora's heart beat faster every time she read it. He wrote about human soldiers who could march for days without sleep. He wrote about warriors who would rather die than surrender. He wrote about battles where a small group of humans had defeated armies 10 times their size through pure determination and clever tactics. One story stayed with her more than any other. A human city had been surrounded by enemies. The people had no food and no water. Their leaders told them to give up. But a young soldier named something she could not pronounce had refused. He gathered 300 volunteers and attacked the enemy camp at night. They fought for 6 hours. When the sun rose, the enemy army was running away, and the city was saved. 300 against 10,000. And the humans had won. Valora closed the book and held it against her chest. She had read it 40 times, maybe more. Her father would be angry if he knew she had it. Books about humans were not exactly forbidden, but they were not encouraged either. The Galactic Council did not like species talking about Earth. She often wondered why. Her door opened, and her assistant, a young female named Lyris, stepped inside. Lyris had blue skin like all Scythians, but hers was a lighter shade that showed her common birth. She bowed her head in respect. "Your Highness, your father wishes to see you. He says it is important." Valora quickly hid the book under a cushion and followed Lyris through the palace. The halls were made of white stone that glowed softly with inner light. Servants moved quietly, their eyes down. Guards in silver armor stood at every corner. Emperor Calvin waited in his private meeting room. He was tall even for a Scythian, with dark blue skin and eyes that had seen 500 years of ruling. He wore simple white robes, but the crown on his head was made of living crystal that shifted colors with his mood. Right now, it was a calm blue. "Valora," he said, and his voice was warm. "Come, sit with me." She sat across from him at the small table. A servant brought them cups of sweet tea. "I have decided something," her father said. "You have studied politics and history and diplomacy for many years, but you have never left our world. It is time for you to see the empire you will one day rule." Valora felt excitement rise in her chest. "A journey, father?" "A diplomatic tour. You will visit our allies in the neutral sectors. You will meet other leaders, see other worlds, and learn how the galaxy truly works. I have arranged for you to travel on the Starlight Crown with a full guard. You will be safe and comfortable." The Starlight Crown was the royal family's personal starship. It was beautiful and fast, though Valora knew it was not built for war. It had shields and small weapons, but it was meant for ceremony, not battle. "When do I leave?" she asked. "In 3 days. Prepare yourself. This journey will take several months." Valora could barely contain her joy. She had dreamed of traveling the stars since she was a child. Now she would finally see the galaxy beyond her world's purple sky. That night, she packed her belongings herself instead of letting servants do it. She chose practical clothes alongside the formal gowns she would need for meetings. She packed her reading devices and her notes. And she packed the old book about humans. She did not know why, but she felt like she might need it. 3 days later, the starlight crown lifted off from the palace landing platform. Velora watched from the observation deck as her world grew smaller and smaller until it was just a purple dot among the stars. Commander Talix, the head of her security team, stood beside her. He was an older male with scars on his face from battles long ago. He had protected her father before her, and now he would protect her. "Your Highness," he said, "we have a long journey ahead. The neutral sectors are peaceful, but space is never truly safe. I want you to promise me that if anything happens, you will follow my orders without question." Velora smiled at him. "What could possibly happen, Commander? We are traveling well-known routes with a full crew and guards. This is a diplomatic tour, not a war mission." Talix did not smile back. "I have learned in my long life that the universe does not care about our plans. Promise me, Your Highness." "I promise," she said, though she did not really believe anything would go wrong. For the first 2 weeks, she was right. They visited 3 worlds and met with dozens of leaders. Velora smiled and spoke the right words and represented her empire well. At night, she read her book about humans and wondered if any of the stories were true. Then they entered the Hollow Nebula. The Hollow Nebula was a cloud of gas and dust that ships had to pass through to reach the outer sectors. It was supposed to be empty. Scans showed nothing dangerous. The route was used by thousands of ships every year without incident. But on the 3rd day inside the nebula, the alarms started screaming. Velora was in her quarters when the ship shook so hard she fell out of her chair. Red lights flashed. The alarm sound was so loud it hurt her ears. She ran to the observation deck and found Talix already there, his face pale. "What is happening?" she demanded. He pointed at the main viewing screen, and Velora felt her blood turn cold. Something was out there in the darkness of the nebula. Something huge. It moved like a snake through the clouds of gas, and its body glowed with terrible fire. It was coming toward them. "By the old gods," Talix whispered. "It cannot be. What is it?" Velora asked, though part of her already knew. "A Vorak star beast," he said. "I thought they were extinct. I thought they were just stories." Velora stared at the creature that was now clearly visible on the screen. It was nearly 3 kilometers long. Its body looked like metal and fire twisted together into the shape of a dragon. Its eyes burned with light older than most civilizations. She had read about these creatures. Old records said that killing just one had required the combined fleets of 12 species and had cost millions of lives, and they had no fleet. They had 1 royal ship with ceremonial guards. "Send a distress signal," Talix ordered his crew. "Send it to everyone. Anyone who can hear us. We need help now." Velora watched the star beast come closer, and for the first time in her life, she understood true fear. The star beast circled the starlight crown like a predator, studying its prey. Every time it passed near the ship, the lights flickered and the systems made strange sounds. The creature was so large that it blocked out the stars. Velora could not stop looking at it. The old books had drawings of these monsters, but the drawings did not capture the truth. This thing was alive in a way that seemed wrong. Its metal skin moved and shifted. Fire burned inside its body, visible through cracks in its scales. Its eyes were not just eyes. They were pits of burning light that seemed to see everything. "Our shields are failing," one of the crew members reported. "Every time it passes close, it drains our power. We have maybe 1 hour before we lose all defenses." Commander Talix stood in the middle of the bridge, giving orders in a calm voice. But Valora could see the fear in his eyes. He was a soldier. He had fought many battles. But this was something no soldier could fight. "Has anyone answered our distress signal?" he asked. The communications officer shook her head. "The nebula is blocking most of our signal. We reached a few ships, but they are all too far away. The closest military vessel is 3 days out." "We do not have 3 days," Talix said quietly. Valora felt tears building in her eyes. She was going to die here, in the darkness of space, eaten by a monster from old stories. She would never see her father again. She would never become empress. All her dreams would end in the belly of a star beast. Then the communications officer sat up straight. "Commander, we have a response. One ship is nearby and changing course to help us." "What kind of ship? A warship? A cruiser?" The officer looked confused. "No, sir. It appears to be a cargo ship. A small one. It is registered as the Wandering Star." "A cargo ship?" Talix's voice was sharp with disbelief. "What good is a cargo ship against that?" He pointed at the star beast on the screen. "The captain is requesting to speak with whoever is in charge. Put him through." The screen flickered, and a new image appeared. It was a human. Valora's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen a human before. The Galactic Council did not allow them to travel freely, and none had visited her world in her lifetime. But she recognized the features from her books. 2 eyes, flat face, strange rounded ears, skin in a tone between brown and pink. This human was male. He looked neither young nor old by the standards her book had described. His hair was dark and cut short. His eyes were gray like storm clouds. He wore simple clothes that looked worn from years of use. "This is Daniel Cooper of the Wandering Star," the human said. His voice was calm and steady. "I received your distress signal. I see you have a Varax problem." Talix stepped forward. "Human, this is the royal ship of the Scythian Empire carrying Princess Valora. We are under attack by a star beast. Your offer of help is appreciated. But what can one cargo ship do? You should save yourself and report our position to the nearest military fleet." Daniel Cooper smiled. It was a small smile, almost lazy. "I appreciate the concern, Commander, but I have dealt with these things before. I am changing course now. I should reach you in about 20 minutes. "You have dealt with star beasts before?" Talix's voice was full of doubt. "These creatures require entire fleets to kill. The last one took 12 species working together to destroy." "Yeah, I read about that," Daniel said. "They did it the hard way. I have a simpler method." Before Talix could respond, Daniel's image disappeared from the screen. Valora moved closer to the commander. "Is he serious? Can one human really help us?" Talix shook his head slowly. "I do not know, Your Highness. Humans are strange creatures. The Council quarantined them for a reason, though the records do not say exactly what that reason was." He paused. "But we have no other options. If this human wants to throw his life away trying to help us, we cannot stop him." The next 20 minutes were the longest of Valora's life. The star beast continued to circle, draining their shields little by little. Twice it came close enough that they could see the details of its scales, each one larger than their entire ship. Its mouth opened once, showing rows of teeth that glowed with inner fire. Then a new signal appeared on their sensors. The Wandering Star was not an impressive ship. It was small and boxy and covered with patches where old damage had been repaired. It looked like it had been rebuilt many times over many years. Compared to the sleek beauty of the Starlight Crown, it was ugly, but something about it made Valora feel hope. The human's voice came through the communication system again. "Starlight Crown, I need you to move your ship 3 kilometers to the left and hold position. I am going to get the beast's attention. Whatever happens, do not try to help. Just stay back and watch. What are you going to do?" Valora asked before she could stop herself. There was a pause. "Your Highness, I am going to kill it." The certainty in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. He was not boasting. He was not trying to be brave. He simply stated it as a fact, like telling someone he was going to have dinner or take a walk. He was going to kill a star beast. Alone. Move the ship. Talix ordered. The starlight crown slowly pulled away as the wandering star took its place between them and the monster. The star beast noticed the new arrival. Its great head turned toward the cargo ship, and Valora could almost see curiosity in its burning eyes. Then something happened that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. A door opened on the side of the wandering star, and Daniel Cooper stepped out into space. He was wearing armor, but it was not like any armor Valora had ever seen. It was dark gray and covered his whole body like a second skin. It seemed to shift and move on its own, adjusting to his movements. Strange lights glowed along its surface in patterns she did not recognize. In his hands, he carried a weapon. Her sensors could not identify what it was. The readings made no sense. They showed energy levels that should have been impossible for something that size. Daniel Cooper floated in the void between his ship and the star beast. He looked tiny. He looked like nothing. A small creature facing a god of destruction. The star beast roared. The sound should not have traveled through space, but somehow it did. It vibrated through their ship. It shook their bones. It was the sound of hunger and rage and ancient power. Daniel Cooper raised his weapon, and then he moved. Valora had never seen anything move so fast. One moment he was floating still. The next he was a blur of motion, rocketing toward the star beast like a missile. The creature tried to snap at him with its massive jaws, but he was already past its head, running along its body like it was solid ground. Fire erupted from his weapon. Not normal fire. White fire that burned brighter than stars. It cut through the star beast's scales like they were made of paper. The monster screamed and twisted, trying to throw him off. It rolled and spun through space. Any normal creature would have been crushed or thrown away. Daniel Cooper held on, and he kept firing. Valora pressed her hands against the viewing screen, watching with wide eyes. This was impossible. This was something from her old book, from the stories she had been told were myths and legends. One human, fighting a god and winning. The battle went on for hours. Valora lost track of time as she watched the human fight. The star beast. Every person on the Starlight Crown had gathered at the observation windows or around the viewing screens. No one spoke. No one could find words for what they were seeing. Daniel Cooper moved across the monster's body like he belonged there. When the beast tried to grab him with its claws, he jumped away and landed somewhere else. When it breathed fire at him, his armor seemed to drink the flames and turn them into more power for his weapon. When it rolled through space, trying to crush him against floating rocks, he simply rode the motion and kept attacking. He was not just fighting. He was taking the creature apart piece by piece. Valora noticed that he attacked specific spots. He would cut through the scales at certain points, dig his weapon into the flesh beneath, and then move on to the next spot. It was like he knew exactly where the creature was weakest. "What is he doing?" she asked Talix. The old commander was watching with his mouth slightly open. It took him a moment to answer. "I think he is destroying its vital organs. See there? And there? Those must be important parts of its body. He's not just hurting it. He is killing it from the inside out." The star beast was slowing down. Its movements were becoming weaker. The fire inside its body was dimming. Great wounds covered its scales where Daniel had cut through them. Strange fluid leaked out into space, freezing instantly into clouds of ice. But the creature was not done yet. With a final burst of strength, the star beast turned and flew straight toward the starlight crown. Its mouth opened wide, showing all those terrible teeth. It was going to ram them. It was going to take them with it as it died. Evasive action, Talek shouted, but the ship was too slow. There was no time to move. Then Daniel Cooper appeared between them and the beast. How he got there so fast, Valora could not understand. One moment he was on the creature's back, and the next he was floating in front of its face. He raised his weapon with both hands. The lights along his armor blazed so bright that Valora had to cover her eyes. Energy built around him, visible as waves of white fire that spread outward like wings. He fired. The beam of light that shot from his weapon was as wide as their ship. It struck the star beast directly in the face and punched straight through its head. The creature's body kept moving forward for a moment, carried by its own speed. Then it began to break apart. Piece by piece, the star beast crumbled. Its metal scales shattered. Its inner fire went out. Its massive body split into chunks that floated away in all directions. Within minutes, there was nothing left but debris spreading through the nebula. Silence filled the bridge of the starlight crown. Then someone started cheering. Others joined in. Soon the whole ship was celebrating, voices raised in relief and joy and pure disbelief. Valora did not cheer. She was still staring at the small figure floating where the star beast's head had been. Daniel Cooper hung motionless in space, his armor still glowing faintly. He seemed to be looking at the debris around him, making sure the creature was truly dead. Then he turned and flew back toward his ship. "Contact him," Valora ordered. Her voice was soft but firm. "Tell him I wish to speak with him. Tell him he's welcome aboard the Starlight Crown as an honored guest." Talek looked at her. "Your Highness, we do not know anything about this human. He just killed a star beast by himself. That kind of power is dangerous. He saved our lives, Commander. He risked himself for strangers. I will not repay that by treating him with fear and suspicion." She met his eyes. "Contact him, now." Talek bowed his head. "Yes, Your Highness." An hour later, Daniel Cooper stood in the main receiving room of the Starlight Crown. Without his armor, he looked almost ordinary. He was tall for a human, but not as tall as a Scythian. His body was strong but not huge. His face was weathered, with lines around his eyes that suggested he had lived through hard times. He wore simple gray clothes that matched his eyes, but there was something about the way he stood. Something about the way his eyes moved, always watching, always aware. He looked relaxed, but Valora could tell that he could move in an instant if needed. He bowed his head slightly when she approached. "Your Highness, I hope the beast did not cause too much damage to your ship." "Our ship is fine, thanks to you." Valora stopped a few feet away from him. Up close, she could see a small scar on his jaw and another on his neck. Signs of old fights, old battles. "You saved all our lives. I do not even know how to begin thanking you." "No thanks needed. I was in the area. It seemed like the right thing to do." Talek stepped forward. "The right thing? You fought a star beast alone. Our records say that these creatures have not been seen in 100 years. The last one that appeared killed millions before it was stopped. And you killed it by yourself in a few hours." Daniel shrugged. It was such a simple gesture, so casual. Like what he had done was nothing special. This one was young, maybe 800 years old. The old ones are bigger and meaner. This was not that difficult. "Not that difficult," Talek repeated, his voice flat with disbelief. Valora had so many questions. They burned inside her, demanding answers. She had spent her whole life reading about humans, wondering if the stories were true. Now a human stood before her, and he had just proven that the stories had not been exaggerations. If anything, The stories had not been impressive enough. "Please," she said, gesturing toward a table where food and drink had been prepared. "Join me for a meal. Your ship can follow ours while we travel to the nearest station for repairs. It is the least I can offer." Daniel considered this for a moment. Then he nodded. "Thank you, Your Highness. I accept." They sat across from each other at the table. Servants brought food and poured drinks. Talek stood nearby, watching Daniel with suspicious eyes. Velora waited until Daniel had eaten some food. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since she first saw him step out of his ship. "How did you do it? Your armor, your weapon, your speed. Nothing in our records suggests that humans have technology like that. The council told us that humans were primitive." Daniel set down his fork and met her eyes. For the first time, she saw something besides calm in his expression. It might have been sadness. It might have been anger. She could not tell. "Your Highness," he said slowly, "what do you know about why my people were quarantined?" "The council said humans were unstable, dangerous. They said humanity needed to be contained for the good of the galaxy." Daniel laughed. It was not a happy sound. That is what they told everyone. But it is not the truth. The truth is much simpler. He leaned forward. "They were afraid of us. They saw what we could become, and it terrified them." Velora felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean? What could you become?" Daniel did not answer right away. He picked up his cup and took a long drink. When he set it down, his eyes were distant, looking at something she could not see. "Do you really want to know, Your Highness? The truth about humanity is not a comfortable story. It might change the way you see the galaxy. It might change the way you see everything." Velora thought about her old book, about the stories of impossible warriors and battles against all odds. She thought about what she had just witnessed outside these windows. "Yes," she said. "I want to know everything." Daniel leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. The servants had left the room. Only Velora, Talix, and the human remained. Outside the windows, the nebula clouds drifted past like colorful smoke. "Humans are not like other species," Daniel began. "Most races in this galaxy evolved on peaceful worlds. They developed slowly over millions of years. They had time to become civilized before they faced real threats." He paused and looked at his hands. Strong hands, Velora noticed. Hands that had killed a god. Earth was different. Our world tried to kill us from the very beginning. We had ice ages that froze half the planet. We had diseases that wiped out most of our population again and again. We had predators that hunted us when we were still living in caves. And we had each other. Each other? Velora asked. Humans have always fought other humans. For land, for food, for power, for ideas. We never stopped fighting. While other species were building their first cities in peace, we were building armies. While other species were discovering mathematics, we were discovering new ways to kill. Talix made a sound of disgust. "So you admit your species is violent by nature?" "Yes," Daniel said simply. "We are violent. But that violence is why we survived when nothing else would have let us live. And over thousands of years, that violence became something else. It became skill. It became art. It became science." He stood up and walked to the window. The light from the nebula painted strange colors across his face. About 400 years ago, humans developed space travel. We started exploring, meeting other species. At first, everyone was friendly. But then we realized something important. What? Velora was completely focused on his words. We realized that the rest of the galaxy was weak. Daniel turned back to face them. "I do not say this to insult you or your people, Your Highness. It is simply true. Most species had never needed to fight for survival the way we did. Most species had never developed the instincts, the training, the technology that comes from endless warfare. The Council saw this. They watched humans for about 50 years. They saw our soldiers, our weapons, our determination. And they became very, very afraid. Valora remembered something from her old book. The quarantine. It was not because you were unstable. No, it was because we were too stable, too strong, too capable. Daniel's voice was calm, but there was fire underneath it. The Council decided that if humans were allowed to spread through the galaxy, we would eventually dominate everything. So they made a deal with our leaders. They would leave Earth alone if we agreed to stay within our own sector of space. And your people accepted this? Talix asked with suspicion. Our leaders at the time thought it was the best choice. They did not want war with the whole galaxy. So they agreed. Humans would stay home. We would not expand. We would let the rest of the galaxy pretend we did not exist. But you are here, Valora pointed out. Outside human space. Daniel smiled slightly. The deal allowed for some exceptions. Traders, salvage operators, people who agreed to hide what they really were. As long as we did not show our true capabilities, we could move through the galaxy quietly. Then why did you show us? Talix demanded. You could have let that beast kill us, and no one would have known. Daniel looked at the old commander for a long moment. Because I am tired of hiding. Because watching innocent people die when I could save them is not something I can do anymore. And because your princess was on this ship. Valora felt her heart jump. May, why does that matter? I have been traveling this galaxy for 40 years, Daniel said. I have seen how the Council works. I have seen how they keep species afraid and divided. I have seen good people suffer because no one is strong enough to help them. He paused. But you, Your Highness, will one day rule one of the largest empires in this sector. You could change things. You could make things better. Letting you die would have been a waste. You saved us because of politics? There was hurt in her voice. No, I saved you because it was right. But I am telling you the truth because of politics. Daniel walked back to the table and sat down. The galaxy is not as safe as the Council wants everyone to believe. Star beasts are waking up. Old enemies are stirring in the dark spaces between stars. Things are coming that will make that creature outside look like a small animal. What kind of things? Talix asked. The kind that will require more than 12 fleets to stop. The kind that will kill entire civilizations if no one is ready. Daniel's gray eyes were hard as stone. Humanity has been watching and waiting for 300 years. We have not been sleeping. We have been preparing. Valora tried to understand what he was saying. Preparing for what? For the day when the galaxy needs us. For the day when all the species who thought they were safe realize they are not. When that day comes, humanity will be ready. How ready? She asked quietly. Daniel did not answer with words. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above the table. Valora gasped. It showed a planet. Earth, she assumed. And orbiting around it were ships. Thousands of ships. Tens of thousands of ships. Warships bigger than anything she had ever seen. Weapons platforms that glowed with contained power. Stations that could hold millions of soldiers. This is just what we allow others to see, Daniel said. The real fleet is hidden. The real weapons are secret. The true strength of humanity has never been revealed to anyone outside our sector. Talix had gone pale. This is not possible. Our sensors, our spies, they would have detected something. Your sensors see what we want them to see. Your spies report what we want them to report. Daniel turned off the hologram. Humanity learned a long time ago that the best weapon is the one your enemy does not know exists. Silence filled the room. Valora's mind was spinning. Everything she had been taught, everything the council claimed about humans, it was all lies. Or at best, tiny pieces of a truth that was much larger and much more frightening. Why tell me this? She finally asked. Why trust me with secrets that could shake the whole galaxy? Daniel looked at her with those storm-gray eyes. Because the old ways are ending, Your Highness. The quarantine cannot last forever. One day, probably soon, something will force humanity back into galactic affairs. When that day comes, we will need friends. We will need people who understand us, who are not afraid of us, who can help bridge the gap between humanity and everyone else. You want me to be that bridge. I want you to have the choice. What you do with what I have told you is up to you. You can tell the council and let them panic. You can pretend you never heard any of this. Or you can remember and prepare and be ready when the time comes. Valora stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was a whole civilization of warriors like Daniel Cooper, waiting in the darkness. My whole life, she said softly, I read stories about humans. I believed them when everyone else said they were myths. Now I find out the truth is bigger than any story. The truth is always bigger than stories, Daniel said behind her. That is why most people prefer the stories. She turned to face him. I am not most people. I am the future Empress of the Scythian Empire. And I want to know more. I want to know everything you can tell me. Will you teach me? Daniel Cooper studied her face for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. Yes, Your Highness. I will teach you. The wandering star flew alongside the Starlight Crown for 3 days. In that time, Valora learned more about humanity than 200 years of reading old books had taught her. Daniel told her about Earth's history. He told her about wars that had shaped human civilization. He spoke of battles where soldiers had charged into certain death rather than retreat. He described warriors who had trained their bodies and minds until they became living weapons. But he also told her about human kindness, about doctors who worked without sleep to save strangers, about teachers who dedicated their lives to helping others learn, about ordinary people who risked everything to protect those weaker than themselves. We are not just warriors, Daniel explained one evening as they sat in her private study. That is what the council never understood. Yes, we can fight. Yes, we can destroy. But we can also build. We can create. We can love and hope and dream. Then why does the galaxy only remember the fighting? Valora asked. Because fighting is what gets noticed. When a human doctor saves lives, no one writes about it in history books. When a human soldier kills an enemy, everyone remembers. He shook his head. It is not fair, but it is true. Valora thought about this. What made you become a warrior instead of a doctor or teacher? Daniel was quiet for a moment. His eyes grew distant, seeing memories she could not share. I grew up on one of the outer colonies, he said slowly. Small settlement, maybe 2,000 people. When I was 12 years old, raiders attacked. Not human raiders. A species called the Corvin. They burned our homes and killed anyone who resisted. I am sorry, Valora whispered. My father was a soldier. He gathered the other fighters in the colony and held off the Corvin long enough for the children and elderly to escape. 37 men and women against 400 raiders. Daniel's voice was steady, but his hands had tightened into fists. They all died. Every single one. But they saved the rest of us. Your father was a hero. My father was a human. Daniel looked at her directly. That is what humans do, Your Highness. When our people are in danger, we fight. Not because we want to die, but because we cannot stand by and watch others suffer. Valora understood then. She understood why Daniel had come to save them, why he had fought the Star Beast alone, why he had risked revealing humanity's secrets to a stranger. He was not just a warrior. He was a protector. On the morning of the third day, the ships reached Nexus Station. The station was a massive structure built into an asteroid, serving as a trading hub for dozens of species. Ships came and went constantly. Lights glittered across its surface like stars. The star-like crown needed repairs before it could continue its journey. Valora would have to wait here for several days while the work was completed. Daniel announced that he would be leaving. "I have stayed too long already," he told her. "I have deliveries to make, contracts to fulfill." The life of a salvage operator does not stop for conversations with princesses. They stood in the docking bay where the wandering star was connected to the royal ship. Guards stood at a respectful distance. Talix was present but silent. He had said little since Daniel's revelations, but Valora noticed that he looked at the human with new respect. "Will I see you again?" Valora asked. "I do not know. The galaxy is large, and my work takes me to strange places." Daniel paused. "But I do not think our meeting was an accident. The universe has a way of connecting people who need to find each other." Valora reached into her robe and pulled out a small object. It was a communication device marked with the royal seal of her empire. "Take this," she said, pressing it into his hand. "It will connect directly to me, no matter where I am or where you are. If you ever need help, if you ever need a friend, use it." Daniel looked at the device for a long moment. Then he tucked it into his pocket and bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Your Highness. I will keep it safe." "Valora," she said. "When we speak again, call me Valora." A small smile crossed his weathered face. "Valora, then." He turned and walked toward his ship. Valora watched him go, feeling a strange mix of sadness and hope. In just 3 days, this human had changed her understanding of the entire galaxy. At the door of his ship, Daniel stopped and looked back. "Valora," he said, "when you become Empress, remember what I told you. The day is coming when humanity will return to galactic affairs. When that day arrives, the galaxy will need leaders who are not afraid. Leaders who understand that strength and kindness can exist in the same heart. I will remember," she promised. "And remember this too." His gray eyes held hers across the distance. The myths about human warriors were never exaggerations. If anything, they were understatements. What I showed you was just a small piece of what we can do. When humanity truly goes to war, the stars themselves will shake. He disappeared into his ship. Moments later, the wandering star disconnected and flew away into the darkness of space. Valora watched until it was just a tiny point of light among millions of others. Then she turned and walked back into her ship. Talix fell into step beside her. "Your Highness, what will you do with everything he told you?" "I will remember it," she said. "I will study it. And when I am Empress, I will act on it. The Council will not like it if you try to change things. The Council is afraid." Valara's voice was firm. "They have been making decisions based on fear for centuries. That has to stop. Humanity is not a threat to be contained. They are an ally we have been foolish enough to push away." They reached her quarters. Before she went inside, she turned to face the old commander. "Talix, I have a request. Do not speak of what you saw and heard to anyone. Not yet. I need time to think, to plan, to prepare. When I am ready, I will reveal the truth. But until then, let the galaxy believe the humans are still a myth." Talix nodded slowly. "I understand, Your Highness. Your secret is safe." Alone in her room, Valora went to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Daniel Cooper was flying through the void in his battered ship. Somewhere out there, Earth waited in silence, hiding an army that could change everything. Somewhere out there, Threats were gathering that would require warriors like him to stop. She thought about the old book that had started her fascination with humans. She had read it so many times, wondering if the stories were true. Now she knew they were. The myths about human warriors were real. The legends were history. The stories were warnings and promises wrapped in words. Valora made herself a vow in that moment. She would become empress. She would change the galaxy. She would build bridges between her people and humanity. And when the day came that Daniel Cooper had spoken of, when the threats emerged from the darkness between stars, she would be ready. The galaxy had spent centuries afraid of what humans could do. Valora was no longer afraid. She was hopeful, because she had seen a human warrior defeat a god. And she knew that when the worst came, humanity would stand and fight. Not for glory, not for conquest, but because that was what humans did. They protected those who could not protect themselves. And soon, she would help them do it for the entire galaxy. The princess turned from the window and picked up her old book about humans. She ran her fingers across its worn cover and smiled. The myths were not just stories. They were the beginning.